I was reading a little bit about you and your story, and you have a really, really strong mission, which really caught my eye, and that's make mental thriving part of everyone's every day. And I would love to hear the story of where that comes from because that's pretty baller.
Yeah, actually, when I first started Sensei, I had discovered neurotechnology in my own life, and I was enthralled with it. And really, what it came from was I wanted to have the experience that I had had with leading neuroscientists in very expensive clinics. I wanted to bring that to my home in between these intensives because I couldn't afford to do that all the time. And I couldn't sustain that level of creativity, insight, focus. And I really longed for it. Right. And so, but what I ended up doing was I went to talk to my existing CTO, my technology officer in my previous company, and I brought him all these devices that were on the market that were just not quite hitting my need. And I said to him, surely we can do better than this, right? Technology wise. And he was like, yes, yes, we can. Um, but it's not enough to start a company with that, right? Like, it's probably very common. You see a problem that affects you, and you think, I'm going to build a company around this because I can be very impassioned by it. But what we did is we actually sat down and we discussed what is it that we want to leave a legacy of? What is it that we want to contribute to solving this problem in the world? And we would feel good about this at the end of our lives. Right. And so, in a very big picture way, in a way that was very human and not technology centric, we thought, could we spend a decade on this or a couple decades on this and actually be still passionate, still interested, right? Still challenged. Is this a big enough thing to bite off? And that was the beginning of Sensei. And it was really grounded in the future of work, the future of education, things that we were very passionate about, the exponential technologies that we could see as techies for some time that we're like, okay, things are changing, the world around us is changing, and how are we going to help humanity? What will be our contribution to helping people to level up in the most profound way that we know how at the source, which is around mental health, mental cognition. And so that's really become that was the core of it. And how can we help the people at scale, right? Because there's a lot of great people doing work like this, but how can we do this at scale for consumers? That became the challenge and what we wanted to bite off.
So where did it so one, I guess before that, what exactly is neurotechnology? What is Sensei? And why are you so passionate? How did you get into this whole thing in the first place?
Yeah, well, it was a setback in my life, like uh, y- a lot of those moments, those low moments in life define you, right? They define your character, right? So I went through a very low point after a motor vehicle accident. I was rear-ended, and in that process of trying to heal myself, going to various types of practitioners, very mainstream. I mean, what I guess you could say some alternative medicine things as well. Um, and I found that I was not able to tap deep enough into my subconscious to let go of the accident. I didn't have the ability to tap into a mind body connection to say to the body, the accident is over. You can be here now safely. And because I couldn't do that myself, it was impossible for me to receive healing in the form of physio and massage. My body was very much going into spasms, like full body spasms. I was stuck in a PTSD hypervigilant state. I was also concussed. Ended up having neck surgery, and so it was quite intense. And so when I was trying to tap into those levels of subconscious, I had been a meditator for, decades at this point. I started when I was 9, doing meditation retreats. So I kind of had that in my toolkit, but I wasn't able to leverage it to the depth that I needed for this sort of catastrophe in my life. And so what neurotechnology is really about using the brain wave patterns, modulating brainwave patterns. And what that means is changing brainwave patterns using the brain's natural innate ability for neuroplasticity, that is the ability for the brain to change itself, to actually direct the way that it changes. So you can do that in really 2 ways. One is a state change, so you feel different now in this moment and for some hours, and the other is a trait change. And the trait change is where you're actually changing the way that you are wired, the way that you behave, the way that you respond to situations, right? And so, we change over time, but we're always training the brain. We're always training the brain with the information that we absorb, and that comes through our screens. It comes through the people that we surround ourselves with. Whatever we choose to consume. And so what this is, Sensei is neurotechnology that embraces both the state change, the trait change, and it teaches you how to master your brainwaves so that you can control your state. And even without the headset, it's actually teaching you how to do it the same way that meditation would. But meditation takes a really, really long time to see results. And most of us just don't have the patience for that anymore. And so, really, Sensei is an answer to that. It's giving you a methodology to do it, and it's trying to make it fun with gamification, and it gives you visibility with quantified results.
Very interesting. Okay, so I've been really interested in frequencies and brainwaves and tapping into certain brain states through listening to I'll just go on Spotify, right? And I'll just listen to like binaural beats at whatever hertz if I want to, get pumped up, if I'm about to do some creative work, if I want to wind down in the evening. And it's really, really cool stuff. So I would love for you to but I still don't fully understand all of it. And I know there's multiple brainwave states. So for somebody who maybe doesn't have the knowledge on it or has never heard of it or is interested in just utilizing these different brain states, could you kind of explain what each one of them is and how to tap into them and what the benefits of them are?
Yeah, for sure. So with the binaural beats, is that helping you? Like, is it helping you for sleep, let's say? Yeah?
So I don't use them so much for sleep, more so I have used them more so like to wind down. I listen to brown noise when at night, which helps me.
Yeah.
But what has helped me with the binaural beats is, like, focus work. If I need to just, like, put my head down and
Oh,
just
that's fun.
focus on something for a period of time, boom, that really helps me. Or if I'm doing creative work, I'll look up, like, binaural beats creative, and I'll find a playlist on that. And so, like, while I brainstorm, I'll listen to these beats, and it's I don't know, it's doing something up there because it's definitely
Yeah.
helping.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
It's
those are the 2 that I probably use them the most for is creativity and productivity.
Yes, and so that it is definitely in the same realm, it's the same idea. With binaural beats, we're using the same brainwaves, which is what I'll get to in a moment, but we're kinda hoping that they get to the right places in the brain. With, the modalities that we use, with neurofeedback, with the light stimulation through the skull, we're actually putting it right where it needs to be, so right at the source of the brain. So
Mm.
not through the auditory perception. So yeah, so basically, when the neurons are firing, there's electrical activity. And then at the skull, we can measure that electrical activity. And then we've measured it to be at different frequencies. So you're right. So it's like number of cycles per second. And from very, very fastest to very, very slow, it goes gamma. right? So usually they think about gamma as like 40 hertz range. And gamma can go to a third harmonic at 120 hertz range. It's a number of cycles per second. So we can train gamma, and gamma is associated with, it's been measured in high strength and high sustained strength and synchrony. So that's to do with its timing all being aligned. Um, and in monks that have meditated for many decades and who have been doing a heart-centered, compassion-based practice.
Mm,
So gamma tends to be quite enigmatic, right? So it is a state of clarity. It is a state where epiphanies come, right? So it's a very cool state. We do train gamma. It's the hardest one to train because it's very historically, it's been very difficult to measure gamma with high fidelity. So that is a technical obstacle that we've overcome. So back to gamma is the highest frequency of the brain waves, and then it goes down to beta. And the beta frequency is very much like we are here right now. It is about focused attention. So it's about being able to direct your attention, but I am directing my attention outwardly, right? So it's based on my senses. I'm using analytical thought. I am, hopefully in a focused attention way, I'm able to avoid distractions, right? But that is also the same place where you would have analytical thought, which can be a positive or it can be a negative. That's where overthinking can happen as well. And then as you go into slower, lower states, now you're in alpha. And alpha is a very relaxed state of being, right? That's like a very spa-like experience. It's where you want to be, where when you're hanging out with your friends and loved ones, you want to be more relaxed, more chill, like you're talking about winding down with the beats at the end of the day. That's alpha. If you go lower than alpha in theta states, now theta states is where it's usually associated with deep meditative states, right? It's also where you would have insight, intuition, right? And so that's a different place to solve problems from. And then even deeper than that, you're getting into delta, and that's more associated with sleep states. So those are the different bands. And so what's interesting to note is that we spend a lot of our time in beta, right? And a lot of our screen time keeps us in beta, right? It's the dopamine hits, it's the fear cycle of the news cycle. All those things are keeping us in beta, and we're having a more and more difficult time shifting out of data even into alpha. So we go between beta and then delta. And then, surprise, surprise, we're having trouble with sleep in delta because we can't shut off the beta, right? So that's really where the problems are arising and why mental health is becoming such a topic.
okay. I'm glad you brought that up because I'm interested in brain health versus mental health. I've heard them used
Mhm.
in conjunction. I've heard them used, in opposition. So, what is your take on brain health versus mental health? Are they one and the same? Are they different? Do they play into one another? I'm curious.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, brain health is more related to the organ, right? So it's physical, right? So it's about the neurology of it. You know, uh, if you have a concussion, that's a brain health problem, right? If Yeah, it's really that's really more around, what you eat, exercising, so getting the oxygenation in. Those are things that can help with the brain health, where the mental health is really, it's really more about how you feel. It's about how you feel, it's, social health, it's what you think, it's how you behave, right? So now that's getting more into the psychology of it. But the 2 are very tightly interrelated. So when we talk about, I'll go back to Sensei for a minute. So when we were designing Sensei, we looked to different experts across these different fields around brain and mental health. And so on our advisory, we have people who are neuropsychologists, neurosurgeons, right? People who specialize just in consciousness and meditative studies, right? Neuroscientists, of course, and clinicians. But all of them, I would say, cross between the health of the brain, the organ, and the psychology of the health, of the brain's health and the mind's health. So when we are doing neurofeedback, right? So neurofeedback is one of the five elements of our system. What we're doing is we're addressing both. And the reason is because it is actually directed neuroplasticity. So as we are training the neural pathways, we can actually help to amplify feeling good, right? We can help to amplify the calm state and self-awareness of that state and self-regulation of that state. And that is around the psychological well-being.
Got it. Okay, so that makes sense. So brain health, it sounds like in a way brain health kind of feeds your mental health, or it's like a precursor to your
Yes.
mental health.
Yes, and it goes the other way as well. So if you are having a lot of stress in your life, if your thinking patterns, your habits of thinking are such that you are perceiving things as threats, and that is creating a lot of high cortisol, and you're creating that sort of environment for your brain, then it will also affect your neurology. That's the neuroplasticity of it.
Yeah, you had a quote in an article where I don't remember the exact quote, but you talked about how we are all able to change the default state so that we, instead of having this negative self-talk or putting ourselves down, like that's our default, right? So you talked about how we can reprogram our minds default state to help our thoughts work for us rather than work against
Mhm.
us. So I would love for you to explain a little bit on how, you know, using Sensei or just tapping into these different brain frequencies and is able to kind of help us change that default state.
Yeah, that's really good because actually what there were two things I really wanted to embed in the system. And one of them was what you're talking about, which is being able to rewire around our blocks. So our self-limiting beliefs. And we do that and then the second one is to be able to create these the gamma states, those epiphany states. And in order to put that into the system, we had to gamify it and we had to make it so that it would unlock. That's the best way to set people up for success. If we just throw them right into the deep end, they won't have success. And so that's sort of the framework that I'm working with. But the inner work, that work around rewiring our limiting beliefs and that inner chatter, that narrative, that is so core to any true personal growth, right? So if we are doing personal growth with just positive thinking, we're sitting at a very surface level of the mind. And even though we're thinking those things, we don't truly believe or embody those things, right? So to do that inner work, we have to go into a state that's really an alpha theta state. Right. And so remember, alpha was that calm state, theta is that meditative state. The alpha theta level is very hypnagogic, and that can be scary for people, so you have to be ready for it. But that is something where you can do that work with yourself without an intermediary, right? So that becomes a lot less scary. And then the degree to which you enter that state is really based on your own physiology. You won't go more than what you want to go, but it's in states like that where you can practice the rewiring, and we do that with forgiveness practice, and we do it with another meditation, which is a gratitude practice. And so, no surprise, those two meditations are super powerful. And it's work that you can do, and you can do it on big things, and you can do it on small things. And our, it's the work of our lives, really, right? To kind of simmer down that negativity and let us reach our full potential.
Meditation is something that I think people have a negative connotation with. I did for a long time too. And I think it was because it was like it had to be this all or nothing of sitting there with my eyes closed in a dark room, chanting om like a monk or something for like 45 minutes, or it wasn't worth doing at all. But do think that there's more science. Obviously, there is more science coming out now on the all the benefits of meditation. So, is your product something for somebody just starting out on their meditation journey, or is it more so for somebody who's more experienced, who is trying to kind of go from like good to great with their own brain health, mental health?
It that's the interesting thing about it is that it's for both. So it's personalized. So again, it's if you were to do, let's say, a calm session, and let's say it's the beginning of your meditation journey, and someone else were to do the same calm session, you would have very different experiences. Right? So it is based on your brain waves at that moment. It's based on what we've learned from you in your other sessions, and it's really quite personalized in terms of how much we challenge you, right? And how deep you let yourself go. So what I think it's great for beginners. I used to think of it and describe it as a meditation for non-meditators because it's really meant for you coming in and saying, I'm not sure what to do, and I'm not sure if what I'm doing is working. And I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to just sit there, go through the motions. Like we have preconceived ideas about, we have preconceived ideas about, chanting or sitting in a particular position, this sort of thing. That those things we have to kind of put aside. This is just an inner experience of you with your biosignals, and Sensei is meant to allow you to have a direct experience of it. So, for example, if you are going into alpha, which is like a calm brainwave training, as you produce more alpha waves, then it will give you sounds, right? And as you sustain them, it will give you more sounds. And then over time, you will see that you're able to sustain them for longer, you're able to make them stronger, and then you will see that in your day, you will be able to call on that. You know what that feels like now. And so that gives you more empowerment.
What was your journey like starting out with meditation? I know you mentioned you had the motor vehicle accident, and then it took a lot of trial and error to stumble upon neurotechnology and see the benefits from that. What was your journey like with meditation? How were you introduced to it? And what role has it played in your life?
Yeah, I mean, I was introduced to it when I was very young. In my house, we always had a meditation room, and I was always encouraged to explore. And I was always encouraged to explore for direct experience versus for someone to follow. So that's always been a bit of a pillar for my practice. But I've explored a lot of different traditions. And I think that when I came across neurofeedback and neurotechnology generally, I I had really settled on one particular type of meditation, and it was of a gamma theta signature. But at the time, I didn't know that. I'd never measured my brain waves. I didn't understand that all the different meditations kind of got boiled down to four brainwave signatures. I didn't know that because I didn't realize there was a whole body of scientific research. And I'd approached it more from an experiential perspective. But I'd explored, Hinduism and Sufism and Gnosticism, Buddhism for a long time, and the last tradition that I spent time with was a Tibetan Buddhist practice that was very heart centered, so Mahayana
Mm.
practice, and that was really centered on single pointed focus meditations. But what I found was that some meditations were very heart heavy and some are very head heavy, right? So, and I found more for me, the ones that were heart based were deeper and resonated with me a lot more. So when I started seeing that actually, maybe I'll share this. When I first saw my brain waves, um, I had shared with the neuroscientist that I had a meditation practice and I had for some time. And so they asked me to do 5 different meditations. And then they showed me my brain waves after each one. And, my educational background is as an electrical engineer. And so, I love seeing the waves as well, right? That really made it very tangible for me. And so, but seeing having just experienced these different meditation styles, seeing them mapped, and then understanding that there was research behind that, then I was sold. I was like, this is my new area of passion. I must know everything about this, right? But then I realized that the gamma theta was the one that I leaned toward. But when we started building the system, I realized that a lot of people that I've met who have spent many years meditating in one meditation style might not be the most well rounded people. They might not really be able to sustain healthy relationships, to be fully active in the world, right? And so what we've built is actually a system that teaches mental flexibility. So that's really a fundamental pillar of Sensei. So we want people to be able to shift between the gamma theta and the alpha gamma and the alpha and then the beta and the gamma. We want them to know how to do that and to be able to call upon that skill in their day-to-day life as they need it.
Okay, so a regular practice with this is going to in turn, and correct me if I'm wrong, but sounds like a daily practice with this is gonna allow me, for example, to go from like an alpha, theta to a beta to a gamma just naturally. Does it help the brain allow you to tap into those states more naturally?
That's exactly right, yeah. But the whole thing is gamified so that the experience, so if you were to start, with the Sensei practice, it would do an assessment. Right. So one of the 5 technologies that we've included is an assessment that's based on, methodology that's tried and true in laboratory settings, and it's called event related potentials. But what's really important about that is that it's an objective measurement of your brain's processing speeds, right? So that's kind of cool. You can track that over time. Right. So when it does its first assessment, it's also going to ask you a series of questions. And then it's going to recommend a particular mission. So we have an interstellar travel sort of theme within the game. And so the mission will be roughly 8 weeks is probably on average. And the first mission might be sleep, or it might be brain fog related, or focus related, or stress management related, right? So you get the gist. The first level is all about, let's take care of yourself. Like, it's self-care. So we call that the me level, right? So before you can really tap into deeper meditative states or creative states, we want to get you really resilient. And so that is a really important element of Sensei, is that we're not going to throw you into the deep end. So before you go into, let's say, inner work and that, you're gonna take care of the fundamentals. And then it's going to unlock more and more things over time based on your goals and then based on your assessments.
Now, I know you have a son who's, I think, like 13, 14, somewhere around there.
14.
14, that's awesome, and I know I've heard you talk about how he uses it too, and I think that is something I'm super passionate about is just, you know, the brain health and mental health of the younger generation who has grown up in this technologically advanced society that we now live in. I'm 24, so, like, growing up, yes, we had computers and we had phones and things like that, but they didn't really start to get more advanced until I was in like, middle school, high school even. So, what do you think brain training, the impact on the younger generation is going to have with the coming years?
Yeah, I mean, if I have a second passion, it's around the future of education. So, you know, yes, so that I thank you for that question, because right now I'm thinking a lot about that. He does brain training twice a day, same as me. So he'll do the focus training. Now for him, it's about honing his attention for studying, right? So things are just starting to get a little bit more serious at school, and he wants to do well, right? So he's motivated to do well. And then he's also really athletic. And so the focus training is actually very good for improving reaction time. It's the one that the athletes would use as well. So it's actually a double whammy, right? It's quite excellent for his age group. And when I think about what he's grown up with. Initially, he was in a Waldorf school, and so it was actually no screens, right, for the longest time until he was, I guess, 10. And then it was when COVID hit, that suddenly we had to shift his educational program, and then he had to get online, and all of a sudden it's like, "Oh, here's all these gadgets, and you better be online." And that was we really, had to figure out how to manage that, as much as he had to try and figure it out, we had to try and figure it out. And I think, um, now we're fairly strict about it, but I do see it with him and his friends and everything that, their ability to sustain their attention and go deep on a topic is actually has been quite thwarted, by the bombardment of notifications, the doom scrolling, right? Like we're not equipping them very well. So I think it's becoming more and more important to counterbalance that with the brain training, and very simply focus training. It's quite essential that we do something to counterbalance that. So yeah, I mean, I think, the future of education is of paramount importance right now, as we look at, the coming of age of AI, and what the future of work will look like, for this next generation.
AI is such an interesting topic right now because you have people who are super anti AI, think that it's all gonna kill us, right? I listened to a podcast with the Diary of a CEO, and he had an ex Google guy on who was talking about if we don't take control of AI, like we are going to have serious problems in the future. And then there's other people who are all in on AI, and then there's people like me who are like, yeah, Chat GPT is cool, and like some of these other AI things. So, um, what are your thoughts on the future of AI, and how can we harness it and use it to really amplify our health and our well-being moving forward?
Now, I think that it's a good thing. It's healthy to have a little bit of a fear of AI, but hopefully it's also mixed with some optimism, right? So, this progress that we're making in technology, the exponential technologies, and AI is going to catalyze them. And so we're going to see tremendous benefits in education, right? Like private AI tutors for, right? Like, personalized, right? We're going to see tremendous benefits in healthcare, right? But it's a double-edged sword, right? And so, we were just talking about the next generation, having some, attention disorders, right? Potentially, or at least difficulties, right? Well, that's not going to fare well for the future of work, and what opportunities they're able to uncover, because the the evolution of AI as it stands, it is going to displace a lot of jobs. So I'm less worried about the AI, killing us, than I am about the disruption to our socioeconomic system, and how we as a species will rise to the occasion, right? How will we create new opportunities, right? How will we find purpose and meaning if our day to day is not consumed with having to work, right? And also, as we create these new socioeconomic systems, will we have compassion? Will we what ethics, what values will come to bear, right? For us as a group, as a collective, right? What do we stand for, right? So are we going to look after the most vulnerable in society? But yeah, I mean, I'm very excited about the future of AI. We use AI in our company, and we, from the very beginning, we decided to use it very transparently. so that people wouldn't, just go like, "Oh, I'm doing my work on AI." We're like, "Yes, do your work on AI and then share with us. Let's learn together because nobody knows everything here." And I've done the same thing, with my son, right? I'm like, "Yeah, you should use AI for school." But it's a matter of asking good questions and elevating your game, right? Let's not be afraid of the technology. So I'm excited about all those things. But I also think that there's, um, you know, maybe I'll just go back a little bit. When I first left the corporate world, I in 2015, I went to Singularity University, and so I'm an alumni from that year. And that's with Ray Kurzweil and Peter Diamandis. And that's where I first really learned, methodically, about the exponential technologies and the future of AI and the future of work. And that's been really very present for us as we've created Sensei. And so, back to, the purpose of Sensei, we thought this is the root of, our happiness, the root of, of how we will define ourselves in this new world, the future of work and the future of education, etc. Is based in our minds. So how can we, catalyze the progression of that in a way that was previously, in the realm of spirituality? How can we make that, available to everyone and make it measurable and more scientific?
Hmm. No, that's so good. I think that's, for me, very gives me a lot of optimism and a lot of hope because I'm kind of just like sitting on the fence looking at anti-AI, looking at AI, and I'm like, I don't know which side I should jump on. So kind of hearing you there and saying, yes, there is a threat with it, just like anything. Like too much of a good thing can be not a good thing, but learning to harness it for the betterment of our health, for the betterment of society. I am interested on getting the most out of my brain. I've taken a lot of hits. I played football, so I'm very
Okay.
like my mom's actually a craniosacral fascial therapist, so she works a lot with people with concussion, works a lot with the brain. So I've been learning a lot about it. But if you were to give 3 things that anybody could do to get the most out of their brain, the most out of their brain health, what would those 3 things be?
Yeah, I mean, step number one is guard your sleep, right? So if we aren't getting enough sleep and restful sleep, it will affect our entire day. It'll affect our relationships. We're going to not be able to think clearly. We're going to be irritable. So that's the first domino to brain health and really just overall happiness. So I think that's why you're seeing, so much emphasis on sleep now, is because it is legitimately a cornerstone. And so that's my first advice. The second one is really around, um, it's around our nervous system, right? It's about maybe becoming aware, of when we are not able to turn off um, our go 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 drive mode from the day, right? So, someone like yourself who has a lot of ambition, you have a lot of drive, how can you learn to shift, gears in the evening or when you want to chill out? And that's really important for relationships as well as for your own recuperation. And the simplest thing to do is leverage your breathing. That's the absolute simplest thing to do, and it's free. And in particular, there's a type of breathing that is, it's longer breath out and a shorter breath in, and it's smooth, no holding of breath. So 4 seconds in, 7 seconds out. And you do that like a handful of times. And that alone will naturally calm the body and then in turn the mind. And so what we add to that, so we have a breathing practice embedded in our app, but one of the things that we share in there is that it's very helpful to do, relaxed eyes and relaxed tongue. And so when you're doing that breathing practice, if you can also be mindful of any tension that you're holding in your eyes, any tension you're holding in your tongue. And the tongue in particular is around that inner chatter. It's physiologically connected to that. And around your eyes, it's really that tension is connected into a zoomed in, sort of scrutinizing analytical view versus a zoomed out, more awareness present sort of feeling. And so if you try that out, that's another approach to just calming the nervous system. I know that's something you're focused on. Let me see. Yeah, I mean, I think it's I mean, I have to think that it's about really honing in on where are you placing your attention in the day, right?
Mm.
So we often think we don't have time in the day. It's like, oh, there's too many things to do. I've already got my morning routine, I got my night routine, I'm doing all these things. But actually, how much time in our day is actually wasted on screens? And some of it's absolutely legitimate. Like we need to do some work. We're purposely looking for something. But how many times do we go to our phone? We get on Instagram, and then it's like a couple hours later, right? And so how much time can we be more conscious about where we are allowing our attention to be directed? Because that is not us directing our attention. Something is pulling us, and we're getting the dopamine hits, and we are actually not really in charge of our attention anymore. And so can we claim some of that control back? That would be my advice. And it could be as simple as, one day a week. This is what I do. One day a week, no screens, right? Just take that control back. No notifications. It feels great.
Once a week, you're doing that.
Yeah.
As a tech
One
entrepreneur,
day a
you're
week.
getting off of screens for a whole okay. Guys, if you're listening to
You
this
gotta
and you're hearing this, Paula is a tech entrepreneur, and she gets off of screens for one day. So I'm like, that is motivation to me that I can take a couple hours off. I'm also interested in if you've seen any, like, research or data or done any sort of lab work on looking at the brains of people who might be overstimulated, who might work on a computer all day, every day, or a kid who has 10 hours of screen time. Like, have you seen any data, any research? Have you heard anything or seen anything in terms of like what that really does to the brain and the health of the brain if you're constantly stimulated and if you're constantly on all the time?
Well, what it does to the brain is really it keeps it in a beta state, right? So that is that fight or flight state. So an unhealthy beta range where you are in hypervigilance and you are needing more and more stimulation. So it's the reason why, sometimes you're talking to someone and they're not listening, right? And they're like, they need more dopamine hits. It's the reason why addictions occur, right? It's what so a good test of am I stuck in beta is, do I need like wine, do I need cigarettes, marijuana, etc., to wind down? Well, I'm probably stuck in that state, and that is definitely a symptom that we're seeing. There was a study recently, and this is where I saw that more and more young people are having addictions. Vaping is actually the one that comes to mind from that study, and it is because they're actually struggling with their beta waves. They're really stuck up there. Yeah, and they need a lot of dopamine hits.
And I think we could all use a dopamine detox. I've done that multiple times where even if it's just turning off notifications for a day or a week or just being very strategic with how you're spending your time on screens, I think being intentional with it is very important, especially in today's day and age where you're not just, okay, I'm at a traffic light. I'm in line for a grocery store. You're just constantly picking it up and checking and scrolling. And that's like, we talk about our default mind state. What's our default physical state is to whip out our phones and look at a screen.
It
So,
is. We can't stand in line without pulling the phone out, right? People can't just sit for, half an hour and just be, right?
mm,
Just be with life. Just observe, absorb.
I'm really curious what excites you the most about the work that you're doing and the advancement of AI and this technologically advanced world that so many people wish that we could go out of. Everybody is always like, "Man, I wish we could go back to the '50s and the '60s where we didn't have these devices and whatnot." I'm curious, what makes you so excited? What gives you hope, about the future and the work that you're doing?
Right now, I'm deriving a lot of hope from I'm so moved by a lot of the people who are giving us feedback, like just unsolicited feedback, people who started using the headset. Um, and so I'm finding that people are reporting improved relationships. Like that was a real example when this gentleman shared. He said that his wife said that he was suddenly a good listener. He said, I've never been told that before, but he was just more uh heart-centered, and I think he was just a bit more able to control his attention. Other folks who have been, more reliant on, I think, we're not a medical device, but there are people who have attention issues who are on, let's say drugs for their attention, who've been able to start, weaning off drugs. I find that's like, it's amazing, right? And so that really keeps me going is, can we get people to be more self-sufficient? Can we help them actually with their relationships and their ability to feel more mastery of their life? So those are the things that are actually really exciting me and getting me excited in the mornings, to keep going. But generally, our belief is that there is, the source of our happiness, the source of what we're pursuing in our lives is actually, in our minds, right? And if we want to, in the age of AI, if we want to find purpose, meaning, find an ability to contribute, to adapt to whatever it is that's coming, right? To this new unknown socioeconomic paradigm, we need to learn to brain train in these different states, and we need to be able to learn to shift between these states. That is really important. We need to tap into our true nature.
Mm. Being able to tap into these different brain states, allowing us to shift from them throughout the day. Like, you don't wanna be in gamma when you're trying to go to bed, or you don't wanna be in theta when you're about to go on a date. So, being able to being able to shift into them, I love that. I have this right here behind me, Pure Ambition, the flag. We talked about it a little bit in the beginning, and why I decided to name this podcast the Pure Ambition Podcast. I'm curious, when you hear those 2 words together, what do they mean to you, and how do they apply to your daily life?
Yeah, I mean, when I think about ambition, it's probably not in a traditional sense. I think, and my ambition is really about my commitment to growth, right? To growth and to contribution, right? I think ultimately that is the true source of happiness. And I really wish, maybe my pure wish, and really the thread of the creation of Sensei is really to expand that and empower others to do the same,
Mm.
right? To find their ability to create, to their ability to contribute, their ability to be resilient and adapt to change.
It's beautiful. I love it. That's my favorite part of the show. I always love hearing people explain what their definition is, so I appreciate that. If people are interested in Sensei, if they wanna read more about your story, if they wanna connect with you, what is the best place for them to do that?
Yeah, our name is the same as our URL, so it's sens.ai, and on Instagram, it's sens.ai.inc.
Amazing. Pal, I just wanna say thank you for everything today. I think what you're doing is so needed, and it's definitely, I think you guys are pioneers in the space. I think this product and just the general awareness that you guys are bringing to brain health, to mental health, and really just giving people their health back, giving people their life back, I think is so important and is so honorable. So I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, thank you for coming on today. Thank you for the work that you do. And I'm so stoked to see where you guys are going to go and take this.
Thanks so much, Dom. It's always nice to talk to you.
Thank you guys so much for tuning into today's episode. I wanted to give you all a heads up too that I launched a free community on the Upspace app where you can join, ask me questions, connect with like-minded individuals, follow my 4-week running and strength training program that has some dedicated mobility sessions in there as well, so that we can all optimize our health and fitness together. So if you're interested, head over to the App Store, download the Upspace app, and join the Pure Ambition community today. Love you guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.